Now, I don't want to brag, but I might be the first person to play 2 whole games of Skaven in Old World. Jokes aside, I have been playing quite a lot of Skaven, and I'm having a blast with them. I think I've found how to make them tick, something that I'm going to get into here and probably in future videos. But before we do, just want to give the context of this video. This was a pickup game against Scoutlands. Had a really lovely time. Nice chap. He is currently 3-0 in the at time of recording. He is 3-0 in the square-based online tournament. He was using his square-based online tournament list. So the context of this is I'm playing against a solid player with a solid list. That's, this isn't just a gimmick that works against things that are bad. That's important to remember because this is a hell of a gimmick. So let's get into it. We'll have a look at my list and then we'll have a look at Scout's list as well. So, first of all, I have got 2 level 4 casters. I think this is pretty much mandatory for Skaven. You can only take 2 Grey Seers, so you're going to take both of them. First of all, take a level 4 with Demonology. You've got the Lore Familiar, so you can pick your spells. And you've got 3 of the Obsidian Lodestones as well. The Obsidian Lodestone is quite important. It gives the unit that you're in magic resist 3. It's 1 per stone and they stack. You do get inherent -1 magic resist on the Grey Seer, but that's not enough for what you're looking. You want a really solid magic defense. So that's, I think, 95 points of magic items there. Fairly beefy character. Then there's a second Grey Seer. This is a level 4. I've gone for battle magic. You could definitely go for elementalism, or you could go for dark magic. There's a lot you could play around with here. I haven't quite nailed down what the second caster is, but I think I like battle magic. I think if you're rolling with no upgrades, the spells in battle magic are going to be just generically better than going elementalism and not rolling into Plague of Rust, basically. Then there are 2 Warlock Engineers. This is because we have to take 2 to unlock the are they on here? Yeah, the Poison Wind Globadiers. That's the reason there's 2. The first one is a level 2 caster with Battle Magic and Ruby Ring of Ruin. This is your blaster. You're just hoping to, set it up somewhere, do hopefully a couple of fireballs, Pillar of Flame, something along those lines. Thin out the enemy at range. Because that's important, because you just don't want to be in melee, that's for sure. Then there is a second Warlock Engineer with the Shadow Magnet. Now, the Shadow Magnet is a 40-point magic item, and it gives the unit, the character that holds it and their unit -1 to be hit. So, -1 to be hit, nice defensive buff against ballistic skill shooting, and that and the Demonology Grey Seer are going to go in the Gutter Runner brick. So, Cloud, I guess I've been calling it. So, there are 20 Gutter Runners with throwing weapons and poisoned attacks. It doesn't say on here. There's also, I believe, an assassin in there just to challenge out, just in case things get a little bit dicey. But the defense is there. Is you're -1 to be hit for being a skirmisher. You're minus a second 1 to be hit because of the Shadow Magnet. And you're also magic resist 3. And you have a level 4 caster in there. So it's very difficult for your opponent to get any spells off into you. It's very difficult for them to do any ballistic skill shooting into you. The only thing that you're really worried about are template weapons, such as breath weapons, really. But you're also evasive, so your opponent will target you with a breath weapon, then you get to fall back in good order and hopefully avoid the template. This doesn't always work, as I find out later in the game. I get a little bit fast and loose with my positioning, but I think it's a really good proof of concept, and I'm glad I made that mistake early, because I don't want to keep making that in games down the line. So the rest of the list, there are 3 units of Clan Rats. 2 of them are just 20 with a champion and a musician, whatever the champion's called. They have all got a rattling gun, and the 25 has also got shields, and I didn't go for a banner. So that is, it's got a 5-up save from the light armor and shield. It's got an extra rank just so you're getting more value out of your warband. It falls off less quickly. If you want a bunker to put a caster in, which you probably do, the Grey Seer, the level 4 battle magic caster, quite like sitting in there as a bunker. It does limit your casting angles, but just play better and position well, because that gives you a leadership 10 bubble with your warband. Although there is some dispute over how warband and leadership bubbles work, but everything in this list has warband, so it doesn't really matter. Then there's 2 rat darts. I didn't come up with a name for them, but it's 10 giant rats with a master molder for the leadership 6. That leadership 6 matters a surprising amount, because you will roll 6 occasionally, and when you do, it'll feel incredible. So what they do is they move 6, they're weapon skill and strength 2, so they're terrible offensively, but you just start them in a marching column, 3x3 with the Master Molder at the back, and then you just rocket them forwards, do some move blocking, do some redirecting. Really good, really cheap. I think I probably want to go for another couple of units of these, to be honest. At 42 points, they're an absolute steal. Then I've got the aforementioned unit of Gutter Runners, the big brick of 20, which is very, very good. Then there's another unit of 7, again, throwing weapons and poison attacks. And there are 2 units of 10 Poisoned Wind Globadiers. Poison Wind Globadiers are strength 2, but for each hit they get, they do D3 hits. There is a risk that you do some hits to yourself if you drop a grenade at your feet, but it's fairly unlikely. It hasn't come up yet. So they have, 10 shots, which each one that hits is a D3 hits. They can march and shoot. They're a skirmisher. They're just an extra annoying piece when you're trying to dart around, be like a very evasive wood elf style list that also has to be right in your opponent's face, which is obviously less good, but I think it's an interesting concept to play around with. The core is definitely something I'm going to change. I like the Storm Vermin. I think I want to play around with that. Also, I want to put a Battle Standard Bearer in here. Probably swap the Warlock Engineer with the Shadow Magnet. Make that a Battle Standard Bearer. Maybe just drop him entirely. Have to drop some of the Poison Wind Globadiers and just work out what I want to do with the rest of the points. Maybe put some Giselles in. But the core of the list, the floating unit of Gutter Runners, is very, very good. So just quickly to sort of talk about why it's good, because I've talked about the defensive use of this brick cloud. The way it works is you're very hard to interact with. You're -2 to hit, you're -3 to magic resist, you have evasive, so if you're shot you can fall back in good order, you have fire and flee, so you can stand and shoot and fall back, or you can just stand and shoot and hope that your attacks do a lot of stuff. The Grey Seer, you're going to be picking a couple of spells in particular. Cloud of Contagion, which is the Skaven spell, which is a 9-inch range magical vortex. You're not necessarily getting it off with this character, but just having that flexibility is nice. And it's a 3-inch bubble around the template. Any enemy models in range of -1 toughness. This is very good when you're only strength 3 or strength 4 with a lot of your output. Then you're also going to be taking Steed of Shadows. That's what this list hinges around. Steed of Shadows gives you a 12-inch move. That is quite good. It also means that the Gutter Runners can march and shoot because they have throwing weapons. So, theoretically, you deploy them turn 1, you cast your Steed of Shadows from outside of spell range, you march 24 inches, you kill something on the periphery, and then you just sort of rinse and repeat and do it again. Yes, you are hinging on a spell to get off, but you also have, and I forgot the name of them, each of the Grey Seers and the Warlock Engineers come with D3, I've been calling them Warpstone cookies. It's D3 upgrades. I'll flash it up on the screen if I remember to. Basically what that does, it gives you plus D3 to the cast. You declare it before you cast, you eat 1, consume it once per game item, you do an extra D3 on the spell. On a 1 on the D3 you take a wound, but you still get the plus to your casting roll, so you're more likely than not to get the spell off. So you can fly around 24 inches and you've got poison throwing weapons. That's okay. That's not incredible. But then you combine it with the other spell in Demonology, which is +1 to your strength, attacks, and AP of weapons. So the strength is your strength natively. Attacks is attacks melee only, obviously. But then the AP is all of your weapons, so that includes your thrown weapons. Throwing weapons are strength user, or strength S, which means that you're flying around now with strength 4 AP1 throwing weapons, which are still, poisoned attacks. If you've still got the whole unit, you've got 40 of them. So this is a sort of 750, 800 point Death Star that doesn't do what you might expect a Death Star to do, but it is tanky in non-traditional senses. Obviously, you're T3 with no save, but you're very hard to interact with, magic resist, minuses to hit, fire and flee, evasive, all that good stuff. And it can pretty reliably kill sort of 100-point unit every turn. So if that unit doesn't die, if you manage to keep that 800 points alive, and it kills over 6 turns, 600 points, that's a huge point swing. And I think it's a really strong way to play Skaven. And there's not really many other armies that can do it. This has come from a chap in the 6++ Discord, the initial idea, whose name I will flash up on screen now as a credit, because it's a 5-letter word beginning with A, and I absolutely have just blanked on his username. But he was talking about using Dark Elf Shades to basically do the same sort of thing. Apparently it was a thing back in 6th edition. So this is a variation of that. I think Skaven are the only army that does it to this sort of level, that it's worth indexing 800 points into it. The weakness is being charged, basically. So it's a list that you have to be really spot on with your positioning, which is fun because it's a very sort of, anyone who's played 40k, it's a very Eldar style play style where you're out positioning your opponent, you're bringing, lethal force to bear in a small contained area, and then you're not there by the time your opponent manages to respond to you. So it's probably quite frustrating to play against. My apologies for all of my opponents going forwards. But it is very strong if you don't mess up. So that's quite a rewarding playstyle. Anyway, like I say, some tweaks to make with the list. You'll see those. I've played a couple of games since. So we'll have another list up maybe next week or the week after, depending on how the S-Bot games go. Moving on to Scout Lance's list, quickly whiz through. It is a Anvil of Doom with a couple of runes on there. I think I really like Warhall, but the fact that it doesn't display things correctly here is a little bit of a pain in the backside. But anyway, there is an Anvil loaded up with some slight upgrades, I believe. Then there are 2 Dwarven Engineers, just with great weapons, because why not, extra points. Double character. The Thane is buffed up with lots of offensive buffs, Rune of Smiting, Rune of Might, and then a Rune of Preservation and the Shield Bearers as well. Fairly beefy, does a lot of damage. Then there's a Thane, who's the Battle Standard Bearer, who's only got the Master Rune of Grungi, and there are then 16 Dwarf Warriors, usually going to deploy in a sort of 4x4, get that heavy infantry rank bonus, do dwarf things, and just sort of enable the grinding down playstyle. 14 Longbeards with great weapons and shield. Longbeards are fantastic, getting that native strength 4, I believe, and I think maybe a weapon skill 5. I'd have to double check that one. But just a really efficient troop choice and not that much more expensive in the grand scheme of things for a slow infantry. There's also 14 Rangers with great weapons, crossbows, throwing axes. Definitely worth loading these out. The more I talk to Richie, the more I like having them just sort of equipped with every upgrade you can give them, because it just means that in every circumstance you can do something. Opponent gets too close, no worries, I'll stand and shoot with my throwing axes, stuff like that. Then there are 2 Gyrocopters. Now, Gyrocopters are not something that I have played against a lot, but they do make me nervous because they are quite mobile, and the flame template, again, in this list is actually quite strong, and you'll see that brought to bear later on down the line. There are also 12 Hammerers with Drilled. I'm not super keen on Hammerers, I think, because I typically play faster lists. I like the speed. I think Old World is a game where you win and lose in the movement phase, so if I can just win in the movement phase by being faster than my opponent and positioning correctly, job's a good one. Takes a lot of the stress out of it with the dice rolls having to go your way. And with that in mind, I find it very easy to avoid the Hammerers. But your mileage may vary. Scout Lance has won all 3 of his games so far in the S-Bot, so he maybe knows more about it than I do. And then double Organ Gun. I really like Organ Guns. Obviously, I'm playing Rattling Guns, which is just a worse version. But when I was talking to him in deployment, I said, okay, so those are 24-inch range, right? He said, no, 30-inch, because I think the Empire ones are 24-inch range, but they get an extra artillery dice worth of shots. Yeah, 30-inch range. I actually really rate them. They're enough to keep your opponent honest, I think. I do think this list will struggle into a dragon. That is my read on it, but I think it's a perfect test here because there's a lot of ballistic skill shooting. There is some magic with the Anvil of Doom. If he gets his strength, 2d6 strength 4 AP2 magic missile into me, I'm in for a real bad time. And there's some good melee, there's some good shooting. It's a good variety of things to place against. So we were playing Meeting Engagement, which is diagonal deployment. So if we look at it here, basically that's my line like so, and his was up like this. You also have to put we were playing the square-based online version of the map because we were just practicing for next week's mission pack, or this week now, I guess. You have to start with at least 25% of your army in reserve with no upper cap, but you choose when they come in. So we did a bit of a deploy off. No one I've talked to is aware of whether the Anvil of Doom gets deployed with the characters or with the war machines. I'll be honest, I can see an argument for both. I'm happy to let my opponent do whichever. I don't even remember which way round my opponent did it. That's how little I think about it. But yeah, deployment. So deployment, we started off here. The Anvil of Doom is over here. The Organ Gun, surprisingly, both of them are on the hill. Dwarf Warriors are protecting them in case I come for them aggressively. Jokes on him, I don't want to get anywhere near them. And then also the Longbeards are sort of here. So what he's done is he's set up a sort of kill box, and then if I come in, he's got plenty of room to bring in his mobile units behind, the Hammerers to sort of back up the Longbeards, or the Gyrocopters over here, do some backup. I've got ranked up units. Gyrocopters are quite good into them. For myself, I just slow rolled deployment, went as slow as possible. I had 1 unit Clan Rats in reserve, along with both units of the Poison Wind Lobardiers. I was a little concerned about getting them in range without just getting them blown up by the Organ Gun, so I thought, let's just bring them in as reserves. So I put the Clan Rats here with the Light Armor and Shield just out of range of both Organ Guns. Did the same here with the less useful squad. I've got the level 2 Warlock Engineer in the center, just set up to try and start peppering away. I'll be honest, when I did this deployment, I didn't realize the Anvil of Doom was getting hard cover, so -2 to hit from being in a wood. I thought it was -1, and also didn't realize it had magic resist 3, which is fine. That's on me. I should have checked. So turn 1, not much happens. I think the deployment and the turn 1 map might be slightly combined. I think this is movement after turn 1. So the Organ Guns over here, they started further back on the hill, and as soon as he realised that I was just going to play defensively, he started shuffling them forward. So they were still on the hill, but they were starting to get into range. He can move them 3 inches. I can shuffle backwards 2.5 inches, so I joked that at some point he will catch me inevitably, but my plan was very much just to stay out of range of those as much as possible. So not much there for turn 1. Yes, the Rangers do open up into the Gutter Runners on the flank down here. Does manage to do a single wound. So there are 7 there. He rolls quite poorly, to be honest, and only does a single wound to the Gutter Runners on the flank, which I'm happy about because my Gutter Runners are ready. Moving on to my turn, I start getting real aggressive. So something about these sorts of lists is you want to dictate the pace of the game. The last thing you want to do is set up so your opponent can get into you, basically. You need to start putting pressure on them. So what I do is the Gutter Runners move up here, and they kill, I think it was over here. They kill 2 of the Dwarf Rangers in the top right, which I'm very happy with, honestly. Just starting to chip away at them is good. I'm not expecting to be able to deal with this brick with mine, because I've only put 7 models there. He's got 14. Realistically, it shouldn't go well for me. I do move down in this little spot here, the Warlock Engineer back, so he can start fireballing the Rangers. I think it's between... Honestly, I don't think I do that much to them in turn 1. I kill a couple of models. Over here in the center, both Rattling Guns move up to be in range of the Anvil that's in the woods, while also staying out of range of the Organ Guns over here. I do a little bit of shuffling so that the Anvil is closer to this brick of 25. I think I cast Oaken Shield on them, give them a 5 up ward. So I'm less worried about this unit dying, and both Rattling Guns are within 3 inches of their parent unit, so they can't just be sniped away. So basically just being very precise with my movement, that's what I'm going with. The Giant Rats on the flank do march up. That is what a Rat Dart is going to do. It's going to try and get behind you. It's going to stop you from marching, possibly. I say to him, on turn 4, I'm going to be charging those Organ Guns, which I think he takes seriously because he tries to deal with them on his next turn. And then, oh, look at this. This is 22 models. That's 20... Gutter Runners, and then a Gracier and a Warlock Engineer just marching 24 inches, getting within range of the Dwarves and throwing. I think I literally kill 1 or 2 models. I'm not expecting to kill much. Basically, what I want to do is put pressure on the Organ Guns so they can't come towards the squishy stuff, because if I stay out of half range, which I don't think I have done, but I can evasive backwards. If I stay out of half range, they're going to be hitting me on 7s, I think it is. So I'm really not too concerned about that. And that's before, any risk of misfires. So yeah, I didn't get I think it's called Gathering Darkness, the spell off that gives you +1 strength and AP. So my attacks into the Dwarf Warriors, fairly inconsequential, but it's fine. I want to get up here, threaten this center part, and next turn I want to get behind my opponent. I want to just really cause him some issues, get out of his charge arc, start killing those war machines, and then I've got agency in the game. Moving on to his turn 2, both of the Gyro Bombers come in on the flank here. The Rangers move round and I believe they go for a charge. Yes, that's right. So they charge into my gutter runners. I do remind my opponent that I have initiative 5, so unless he goes with his hand weapons, I'm going to be striking first. But also, I can stand and shoot at close range, and it's one of those where it's just like, I've got to do it. I haven't got any choices. So makes the charge over here, and then the Anvil of Doom is fully dispelled on my turn, which is magnifique. Other than that, I think, both. So he decides not to charge in with the warriors, which is smart, because all I'd have done is fall back and, fire and flee, maybe killed another couple of models. Then my opponent doesn't realistically get anywhere. I automatically rally at the end because of fire and flee. I still come over the back of the organ guns, and it's really annoying for him. So he decides not to charge, and he just tries to light me up with the organ guns. I decide not to evasive backwards. I think that was probably wrong because the amount of movement I have. I decide not to evasive backwards. I think in retrospect that's wrong. I probably should have done that. There we go. Yeah. I decide not to evasive backwards. I think in retrospect that was wrong, realistically, because he killed 2 whole models with 2 whole engineer supported organ guns. If I'd fallen back, honestly, he probably doesn't kill. It maybe kills 1. The Rangers move up with the King, and otherwise, he gets the defensive buff onto the Warriors, because I think at this point he's still worried that I'm going to put damage into the Warriors. It's one of those things where if you haven't seen the list before, you don't know how it functions. It's very difficult to play optimally into it, which is definitely going to be a benefit when I go into events with this, because Skaven are not in a great spot. Over here on the flank, the one combat we've got down on my right, the gutter runners strike at the same time as the Rangers. The Rangers make, I think, 7 attacks into me because 6 frontage, but I make 14 attacks back. So surprisingly, I kill, I think, 1 in melee and 1 with the stand and shoot, and my opponent loses by 1. He has a banner in there, but doesn't have close order or anything like that. So I win by 1, and he then gives ground backwards or falls back in good order. I test to restrain, pass, because I'd rather just shoot him and then have him charge me again and just repeat the same, scenario. Other than that, the giant rats up here pass their panic test. Leadership 6, maybe. I told you, Master Molders, they're not awful. That's as good as I can get. They're not awful. And a fairly uneventful turn 2 for Scout. Moving on to my turn, as you can see, these hilarious arrows, unfortunately, because they were all counted as individual units on Warhall, just the way that it's coded, we get an arrow. But as you can see, the entire unit just goes over the top. Because the organ guns are still in the hill, I just line up, make sure that I can get all of them into one of the organ guns or both, put all my attacks into them, bish bash bosh, jobs again, kill the organ gun. That's the expected result. I think I do something like 9 wounds into the organ gun in the shooting phase, just because I'm rolling so many dice. It's got a 5 or 6 up save. I think it's a 6. So it's very not surprising. The game plan here is kill this one turn 2, kill this one turn 3, dance around and try and deal with other things on turn 4. Both the Rattling Guns and the Pillar of Fire go this way. So I did cast Pillar of Fire last term, actually, and it helps me thin out the Dwarf Rangers before they do anything. But then it's dispelled. But over here, I managed to fire some fireballs and some Rattling Guns into the front. Gyrocopter, killing that, and I think I also do a wound into the back Gyrocopter from memory. So chipping away at those, which is good, because they are a real pain for this list. This is like mobile pieces to deal with my mobile pieces is not what we want. Other than that, a little bit of a misposition here, actually. Looking back at it now, I don't think either of us caught us at the time, but I'm definitely not screening this Rattling Gun, so I should probably have moved forwards a little bit more. Warlock Engineer as well, just positioned to be able to put shots both ways. I think he fireballs this way into the Rangers, and I roll very well between the fireball and the Gutter Runner's poisoned attacks, thinning them down to only, I think it's 4 models left for the Dwarf Rangers, so going very well. Gutter Runner's OP, I think, is what we can take away from this. Skaven Foot Infantry, better than anything else in the game, better than dragons. So I'm positioned behind my opponent, which is exactly where I want to be against a slow army, so very happy about that. I do still keep my units in reserve. I'm thinking I can bring them on over here, but again, I haven't read the mission properly, so I'm going to have to bring them in on my board edge later on. So a little bit of a misplay there as well. I should probably have brought them on turn 2 and start moving them up. Turn 3, Scoutlands comes up with a fairly big brain play. So what he does is he declares charges with both engineers. So he charges the front one first, and we get this very funny long pillar. And then he charges the second one into the flank. So both of those go off. I'm like, cool, I'll stand and shoot. We then have a couple of minutes reading of the rules. Turns out you can't stand and shoot the engineers because they can't be targeted if they're within 3 inches of a war machine. It's not if they're 3 inches and not the closest. It's just if they're within 3 inches, you can't shoot them. So he said something like, this is a bit cheesy, but you've brought cheese, which I appreciated as a rat. But I loved it. I was like, oh, that's so big brain. This is the play. You need to get back into it. So something that I'm going to have to watch out for, basically. Engineers that can charge from being screened are surprisingly good at tying up big bricks of gutter runners because they don't actually get that many attacks. So my opponent kills, I think, 2 gutter runners, and I think I kill 2. I give ground backwards slightly, but it's not, off the board. I give ground slightly, not off the board, so, not super concerned about that. Just end up back here, 4 or 5 inches back. So my opponent does also bring on the hammerers over on the flank, near the rats. The rats, basically, I've screened off this back corner between my gutter runners and the rats. That's another nice thing about playing a mobile list on a mission like this. Make it very difficult for my opponent to bring on the reserves. If he brought on the hammerers here, I think I'd have been in a world of hurt. But those rats that I was using to screen really coming in big. I think, if I remember correctly, the Longbeard's about face, as do the warriors. And what he's doing is he's trying to set it up so no matter which way I go, he can catch me as long as I don't get the spell off. That's the sort of thinking here, I believe. So, I don't kill the 2 engineers. They're both living on a wound. But I don't run off the table. Over here, the anvil does some wounds into the clan rats in the center. I'm not super bothered. And the rangers do kill 2 of the gutter runners in the shooting phase, causing them to panic and fall back here. But not too concerned. Moving into my turn number 3, I again get Pillar of Flame off, trying to threaten this long, basically just bounce through. I need something like a 5 on the dice, but if I get it in my opponent's turn, it'll be great because I'll hit 3 units, or maybe even 4. I can't remember how that lines up. Other than that, casting Oaken Shield again, the gutter runners move up, throw some more poison, kill 2 more rangers. This is going very efficiently for me on the flank. Turns out my skirmishers are performing a lot better than scouts. Over here, I do get the Demonic Vigor. Maybe that's the spell. Apologies for anyone who uses Demonology a lot. I'm sure you're screaming at your screen, as this is the 3rd spell name I've given the same spell. But yeah, over here, I cast Demonic Vigor, which gives me +1 attack, strength, and AP. So suddenly, my frontage is 9 attacks, poison, strength 4, AP 1. And funnily enough, those 2... dwarf engineers do fall over. I only needed to do 1 wound to each, so didn't have too much issue there. However, this is my turn, so I'm kind of out in the wind. Fortunately, my opponent wasn't able to get close enough because he had to turn around, so he wasn't able to get super close and get into charge range. He was expecting his engineers to die on my turn, I think, to be honest, or on his turn. Other than that, I bring on the Poison Wing Globardiers, I start pushing those up. I want to make it less appealing for the organ gun and, start applying pressure so he can't just fully focus on this 1 unit in the corner. I want to make it so that theoretically he has to deal with other things. That's the game plan. The 2 rattling guns do manage to do a wound to the anvil between them, which is nice because, again, hitting on 7s is not particularly exciting. And down the bottom right, I bring in another rattling gun because I'm assuming in my movement phase, before I get to do the shooting, that I probably lose this fight here for some reason, and my opponent gets to pick up them, and I have to deal with them to get the points for the rattling gun, the rangers, sorry. So, a fairly slow turn, but positioning to do well on turn 4, so I'm okay with how this has gone. Onto turn 4, Scout just starts, again, closing the gap, trying to make it very difficult for me to do things. Basically, it hinges on, am I going to be able to get off Steed of Shadows on my turn? And over here, the organ gun goes into the rats. No, sorry. The organ gun, I should say, goes into the Poison Wind Globardiers. That's right. I believe the anvil goes into the rats, or vice versa, whichever way around it is. The rats take 5 casualties, and they're fine. The Poison Wind Globardiers take 8, which is not ideal. They do pass their panic, though, on a leadership of 5, which is very funny. because they would have been fleeing on everything but double ones for the rest of the game. So I'm quite happy that they pass. I get lucky there, which is nice. It doesn't make a difference to the course of the game, really, but it's what it is. So, yeah, that is another wound marked on the anvil. I'm not sure. Maybe that was it. Pillar of Fire went through, did a wound to the anvil, did a wound to the gyrocopter, killed a couple of hammers. So getting some good value out of the Pillar of Fire, although it is getting dispelled. The two rangers don't manage to do much over here. That's a lie. They kill half the unit. So two more rangers are dead. Fortunately, I am above 25%. So that is quite nice in terms of scoring points down the line, because there are 7 in the unit. I could go up to 8 and still use it as sort of a points style brick, but I just ran a little bit short on points. All right, so Scout's turn 4, he manages to do some damage down here to the cheap distraction units. This is 42 points, this is 100 points, so I'm not too upset if you're going to get some points there. And the rats on the right-hand flank don't flee, which is a bonus. So not much done, but again, just trying to pen me in and catch me on his next turn, basically. Coming into my turn 4. I go to cast See the Shadows, I use the Warp Cookie, I get the extra, I take a wound, but I get a little bit extra in my roll. Fantastic, I get to move. So what I do is I make sure that I mark out the angle, the vision angle of the Dwarf Warriors here, and I just position so that I can get all or enough of my shots into the organ gun here to make sure that it dies. I throw everything into them. I do get off the demonic figure again, making it just really reliable to kill them. And yeah, other than that, I just make sure that I'm sort of out of range of anything that's worrying, because I've picked up a lot of points, but my opponent has the potential to just clean house, and if I let him get some easy charges, he can claw this back to a 10-10 quite easily. I do finish off the Dwarf Rangers on the right flank, which is very nice. At this point, I'm feeling quite good about the game. The unit 2 just runs away down here, and the rats also start to get the hell out of there. Realistically, maybe I should have used them as a move blocker, but that's learning for next time. On to Scout's turn 5. This is where it goes wrong. This is where I've messed up and not understood the target priority, because I should have targeted the gyrocopter. So he moves some stuff up. He does some magic missiles. I think he kills maybe another 1, or maybe he doesn't. Who knows? That bit isn't important. What is important is he moves up here with the gyrocopter, and he puts down his flame template. And I say, oh, how do templates interact with evasive? And we decide between us that actually, yes, I do get to make my evasive. So I roll, and it's a fullback in good order, and I roll a double 1. So I move 2 inches, because Skaven get +1 to their flee rolls. And that means I still take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 models die. And then I fail the panic test. And then I flee, because I'm down to 10 models, which is below half. So it's not a fullback in good order. It is a flee. I think it might have been a flee anyway. I'm getting myself confused. There are too many rules that have very similar writings. But we double checked. I definitely fled. So here I am with a very expensive brick that's about 750 points, fleeing. I have managed to kill my opponent about 650 points, so I definitely can't afford for this to run away. Okay, no worries. I've got a chance to rally. Other than that, not much happens. Just full commitment onto the brick down here, which is, yeah, up until this point done really, really good work. And yeah, on my turn 5, they fail to rally and flee off the board. And this is why I should have had a battle standard. So if I had the battle standard bearer, I'd have had a lot more chances to rally and make sure that I don't flee. That would have been quite big. I could have just put the defensive item on him instead of on the Warlock Engineer and just retooled the rest of my list. So that is definitely a learning that I'm taking away from it. But yeah, I also should have respected the gyrocopter here as well. It's a shame. So coming into here, I realised that I've got to kill... I do the maths, and we do the maths slightly wrong. I work out that I have to kill the anvil, basically, to not lose. The maths on that is actually slightly wrong. I think if I'd killed the gyrocopter, I would have been okay. But yeah, it's fine. It is what it is. So put all my shooting into the anvil, don't do anything. Scout gets 1 more turn just to try and do some bits and pieces. Kills another couple of rats. Kills some more of the poison wind globody as they flee through. It's fine. It's not really the end of the world. I'm still in a position where I need to deal with the anvil or just lose. and up in the top here, nothing else is important. And going into my turn, I don't manage to kill the anvil, which is a shame. So that's a game that I lost because I threw, basically, but a really good proof of concept. Okay, we mustn't have hit the end button. That's fine. Basically, it ended up being 11-9 loss, but if I had calculated the points correctly, I could have killed the gyrocopter and it would have ended up as a 10-10 draw, which is fine. It's a practice game. It doesn't really matter who wins and loses. It was a really good proof of concept, though, for the list. If I had made sure that my big important brick hadn't fled, which is, I think, the one weakness that it has left, templates and fleeing. If I made sure that it hadn't fled by putting a battle standard bearer in there and maybe looking at some other ways to buff leadership, I'm not really sure what I could have gone with, but I'll have to have a look at that down the line. But yeah, really happy with that. I think the big cloud of gutter runners is going to be a really, really strong way of playing Skaven. I think it's going to be the best way to play Skaven. I just need to nail down what the rest of the list is. I can't fit in, I think, the Plague Monk on the Plague Claw Furnace, I think it's called. Whatever it's called. Plague Furnace. I don't think I can fit one of those in. It's very expensive. It comes out of the character slots. I'm already very character heavy. So, yeah, I need to play around with my core. I think I might want to put some Storm Vermin back in. I'm not really sure how I want to go about that and how that affects which lore I go for with my caster. At that point, do I maybe go for a Dark Caster or look at Elementalism on the hopes that I roll the buff spell? I'm not sure, but something I'm going to play around with. Really happy with it. Had the potential to be a 14-6 win if I hadn't basically mispositioned my gutter runners and then failed 2 leadership 7 leadership techs. So to be clear, it's my fault that I lost because I put myself in a position where I needed to make 2 pivotal rolls. But yeah, if I hadn't done that, I'd have won 14-6 into a good player with a good list. So really good proof of concept. I'm looking forward to testing it into dragons. I think it's okay into dragons because you got the mobility to get around them as long as you get your casts off. I think the thing that scares me the most are Bretonnians with their skirmishing Pegasus Knights. I think that's kind of like the one list that really deals with it, along with the Falcon Horn of Freeman turning off the fly. I think that might be an issue for the list, but everything else I'm feeling pretty okay about. So thanks for watching. I'll be back next week with another battle report, maybe some Troll Horde from S-Bot, depending how it goes, or maybe some more Skaven, depending on how many games I get into that, and if I've got any more interesting and exciting updates for you. Thank you for watching. If you haven't already, there's a link to subscribe over here. I really appreciate the support I've received over the last few months, and I'm looking forward to improving the channel and bringing you more content as the months go on. Down below are all the links. There's the Element affiliate link, all of our links to Discord, the 40k sister channel, everything else that we're doing down below. And on this side, there's another video. You don't have to click it, but you could. You could click it.